I've been thinking a lot about connection, and I've had one question on my mind. If every study indicates, and they do, that human beings are made for close relationships to one another, if this is essential not just to our happiness, but to our health, then why are we so bad at it? The divorce rate is 50%. Everywhere you look, people are angry at one another. We have war, abuse, racism, sexism, violence. Why? I mean, this is all obviously bad for us. Shouldn't evolution have figured all this out? And I got my answer. There is an experiment you can do with an 18-month-old baby that will tell you with alarming accuracy whether that infant will have success or failure in their adult relationships. If you have a good relationship to your primary caregiver in infancy, then you grow up to be good at closeness. If you don't have that bond, you get traumatized. So, what is trauma? Well, that's complicated, but for our purposes, let's keep it relatively simple. Trauma is a kind of memory that gets processed in the amygdala, which is the ancient fight or flight center of the brain. The amygdala is so old that even fish have a version of it, and it's made for the kind of world a fish lives in. A dangerous world, full of enemies, down in the dark. Think about the war veteran who comes home and every time he hears a car backfire, he hits the dirt because he got traumatized and his brain thinks it's a bomb. Well, when you're a baby, connection means survival. And if you've been traumatized by your experience of connection to your parents, then the amygdala remembers. And it decides that from that moment on, being vulnerable to somebody is a risk to your life. Getting close to someone, that's the car backfiring. The bomb went off when you were a baby. This isn't about blaming parents either. Raising kids is hard, and there are all kinds of things that can make it harder. But we know these early experiences matter. Trauma needs an enemy. So it tells you that other people aren't safe. Specifically, it tells you that people who make you feel vulnerable aren't safe. But we're supposed to be vulnerable to each other. It's how we get what we need. It's how we connect. It's how we love. This isn't sentimental. This is neuroscience. We need connection like we need air. If we don't get it, it literally kills us. People who can't get their intimacy needs met because of childhood trauma make up half the population. They have a greater risk of heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, anxiety, depression, chronic pain, sleep disturbance. They can live as much as 20 years less than the rest of the population. This is an emergency, but it's worse than that. If we can't truly attach to someone else, then we'll look anywhere else to get what we need. Addictions, bad relationships, consumerism, misogyny, tribal politics, white supremacy, gangs, ISIS, you name it. All of these are things that people attach to in order to meet their need for community and connection, security and acceptance. But it never really works. These things just reinforce our disconnection and isolation and perpetuate our shame. And all of this comes down to shame. When you're a kid and you can't get your needs met by your parents, that's the beginning of shame. The parts of yourself that don't earn you the love that at that age should be unconditional, you build defenses around because they're a danger to you. You've gotten the message early and in a way that's hard to change, that there's something fundamentally wrong with you and that you're unworthy of love for who you truly are. So you repress who you truly are. And anyone who gets near that buried pain triggers your defenses. But the people who trigger us aren't our enemies, not really. They're mirrors. They trigger us because they reach us. We abandoned parts of ourselves years ago because it was the only way we knew how to feel safe. And when someone gets close to those wounds, anger and irritation and scorn, even hate, rush to our aid to protect us from the pain of feeling those vulnerabilities. Behind countless acts of hostility or cruelty or abandonment are wounded parts of our childhood selves crying out to be seen and supported and loved. So what? Is it hopeless? We're all doomed to loneliness and an early grave? No. We have neuroplasticity, which means we can rewire our brains. Everything we didn't get in childhood, we can still get now. The irony is that the very thing our survival brains are afraid of is exactly what we need. And the people who trigger us and who we push away are the people best positioned to give it to us, if they're kind, by challenging our subconscious expectations of what it means to be vulnerable to someone else. Trauma prevents connection, but connection heals trauma. All our pop songs and stories were right. All our attempts to answer this fundamental human question through moral philosophy, religious traditions, even Hallmark cards, they've all said basically the same thing, which is that kindness, love, is the answer. But this isn't a poetic notion. It's not a cliche. It's literally biology. If you can heal one person's trauma, and we know we can, then you can heal 10 people or 1,000 or 1,000,000. Pretty soon you've changed the world, because people who conquered their trauma, as a rule, don't hurt other people. They see others as a part of themselves. They've been liberated from shame. They're connected, and they pass those benefits on to anyone they interact with. We have to tackle this problem. We have to do better, because we're not fish, and we don't have enemies, and we don't live in the dark. I was made for something more than this. I think we all were. Reaching out to, connecting with, and consoling the traumatized should be the single biggest social, moral, political, and public health priority in the world, because this is literally the fundamental problem facing humanity. There are 7 billion people on planet Earth, and we all have a common enemy. There's only one solution.